The night was dark and quiet, save for the occasional distant rumble of thunder. Jacob, the night auditor at the Crestwood Hotel, sat alone at his desk. His fingers danced across the keyboard as he meticulously entered data into the computer. The dimly lit lobby was devoid of guests, and Jacob relished the solitude of the overnight shift. The hotel had seen its share of strange occurrences over the years, but Jacob had always brushed them off as tricks of the imagination brought on by the eerie silence of the night. He didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, even though the building had stood for over a century, steeped in history and rumored to be haunted. As the clock ticked past 3 a.m., a chill ran down Jacob's spine. He paused for a moment, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. It was the witching hour, the time when the barrier between the living and the dead was said to be at its thinnest. He chuckled at his own superstition and continued his work. Just then, the hotel's ancient printer whirred to life. It sat on a small table across from Jacob's desk, its green and white LEDs casting eerie shadows around the lobby. Jacob watched in confusion as it began to print page after page of disturbing images. Blood-soaked demons, twisted and contorted, leered from the paper. Their grotesque forms seemed to writhe and move on their own, like something out of a nightmare. "What the hell?" Jacob muttered, his heart pounding in his chest. He rushed over to the printer and yanked the power cord from the wall, stopping the nightmarish images. His hands were trembling as he tore the pages from the machine and crumpled them into a ball, trying to dispel the fear that had suddenly taken hold of him. Just as he was about to throw the wad of paper into the trash, he noticed something even more unsettling. The images on the pages were not random. They formed a crude but unmistakable message. "Get out!" A shiver ran down Jacob's spine. This had to be a sick prank, he thought. Perhaps a twisted joke from one of his co-workers. But he was the only one on duty tonight, and there was no way anyone could have accessed the printer remotely. As he contemplated the bizarre events of the night, a faint whisper echoed through the lobby. Jacob froze, his breath catching in his throat. He strained to listen, but all he could hear was the soft rustling of the curtains and the distant hum of the air conditioning. "Just my imagination," he whispered to himself, trying to regain his composure. He needed to finish his shift, and then he could go home away from this strange and unsettling place. Resuming his work, Jacob forced himself to ignore the printer and the chilling images it had produced. Minutes turned into hours, and the storm outside intensified, with lightning occasionally illuminating the lobby in stark, ghostly flashes. Around 4 a.m., Jacob heard it again. A whisper, but this time it was louder, more insistent. It seemed to come from all around him, as if the very walls of the hotel were speaking. "Get out, Jacob," the voice hissed, sending a wave of terror coursing through him. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling. No response. The lobby was utterly still, save for the pounding of Jacob's heart. Gathering his courage, he grabbed a flashlight from the drawer of his desk and began to explore the darkened corridors of the hotel. He checked every room, every closet, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The guests were asleep, oblivious to the terror that had gripped him. As he made his way back to the lobby, he noticed something strange. A trail of wet footprints leading from the front entrance toward the printer. They were unmistakably fresh, and Jacob's heart raced as he followed them. When he reached the printer, he saw that it was no longer on the table, but had somehow been moved to the floor. The power cord had been plugged back in, and it had resumed printing the horrifying images. "Who's doing this?" Jacob shouted, his voice quaking with fear. The whispering voice returned, now louder and more menacing. "You shouldn't have come here, Jacob." With trembling hands, he once again yanked the power cord from the wall and grabbed the pages as they emerged. The images were even more gruesome than before, now depicting scenes of unspeakable violence and torment. Before he could react, a bone-chilling wind swept through the lobby, extinguishing the lights and plunging the hotel into darkness. Jacob's heart raced as he fumbled for his flashlight, but it remained stubbornly dark. In the blackness, he felt a presence, something cold and malevolent. It closed in around him, suffocating him with dread. And then, from the inky void, glowing red eyes appeared. staring at him with a sinister hunger. With a scream that echoed through the hotel, Jacob felt himself being pulled into the darkness, his body vanishing into the abyss. The printer whirred to life once more, printing out a final message in blood-red ink. No one escapes. The night at the Crestwood Hotel passed in silence, and by morning, Jacob was gone without a trace. The guests who checked in that day knew nothing of the horrors that had unfolded during the night. The printer remained still and silent, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross its path, as the ancient building continued to hold its dark secrets, guarding them with a malevolence that could not be escaped.